For more, let's cross to Manchester. Latin American analyst Colin Harding is with us. Thanks for speaking with us here on France 24. What do you make of the timing of this arrest? Quite spectacular, like right before a virtual press conference. Why now?
Well, Chamorro was emerging as a very likely single candidate for the opposition. She hadn't been particularly active in direct, open politics in recent months, but her sudden decision to register as a pre-candidate in the process of selecting a single candidate for the opposition was quite threatening as far as the government was concerned. And so I think they decided to try and nip this in the bud before it went any further.
Is it back to 2018 when we saw a whole-scale crackdown by the government?
Well, there aren't protests in the street at the moment, which is what was happening then, and that was an extremely brutal repression in which possibly more than 300 people were killed, and tens of thousands, possibly 100,000 people fled the country, particularly into neighboring Costa Rica. It is possible some opposition figures are calling for people to return to the streets, but people have been very intimidated in the wake of the crackdown on the 2018 demonstrations. So I think it remains to be seen whether people really will take to the streets, but I think they can expect a pretty brutal response if they do decide to take protests onto the streets again.
Daniel, it's amazing. It's been more than 4 decades since, in his first incarnation, Daniel Ortega became the head of Nicaragua after beating the Somoza regime. And yet here we have him against the daughter of the woman who beat him at the ballot box the first time he left power.
Yes, well, Nicaragua is a country of political dynasties, and the Chamorros are one of the most prominent families in the country, but they've always been sturdy defenders of democratic institutions and democratic politics. And as it's been said, the latest manifestation of the Chamorro family is the daughter of a former president. She's the only one who has interrupted the Sandinista grip on Nicaragua since 1979, and that was for a brief period between 1990 and 1997. She dedicated herself mainly to journalism and then into running the foundation named after her mother. But in recent months, she has become prominent as an opposition political figure. And was ahead in opinion polls for the November elections. And so this means a serious challenge to a government which doesn't like to be challenged.
When there were people in the streets in 2018, we were all wondering, Daniel Ortega, can he hang on? How isolated is he? What's changed since then?
Well, the opposition is very cowed and divided, as often happens with authoritarian regimes. The opposition has been split over tactics and over personalities. That's why the attempt to get a single opposition candidate, as represented in this by Cristiana Chamorro, is such a serious threat to them, because of the past 3 years since the crushing of the 2018 protests, the government has felt that it had a solid grip on the country once again. That is now possibly being challenged, and hence their response, which is to follow a well-known authoritarian legalistic route, which is to start investigating foreign opposition figures for alleged money laundering or financial or tax malpractices, and that's what they're doing now with Cristiana Chamorro.
Colin Harding, one final question. We heard there in the United States condemnation. If the international community does tighten the screws, where today in 2021 can Daniel Ortega turn to?
Well, he's has some fellow figures in Latin America, in Cuba and Venezuela and Bolivia, but they can't be of much help to him. He is a pretty isolated figure, but because he has such a firm grip on the country, there's not much that can overtly challenge him. He has become pretty hermetically sealed. Really, he doesn't figure much in public at all. But he's absolutely no intention of releasing his grip on power. And as we've seen with a country such as Venezuela, which has been in a terrible economic crisis for years now, but they can still hang on. In Venezuela's case, they've had Chinese and Russian help and Cuban help. Nicaragua is a much smaller country with a smaller economy. And they really can't expect an awful lot of outside help, I don't think. But I don't think that means that Ortega is going to relax his grip anytime soon.